Now, I've noticed a direct correlation between people that have money and, well, people that don't have money. And it usually comes down to one of these 8 reasons, if not a combination of the 8 in no particular order. And now it's not so much that they know what they're doing wrong or that they do it intentionally, because sometimes we tend to be creatures of habit where we are unaware of what we are actually doing. And so the purpose of this video is to hopefully give you some guidance and shed some light on some possible money habits and money pitfalls that you might be possibly falling into, that I myself have fallen into plenty of times. And I want to make sure that I give this information to you so that you don't make the same mistakes that I've made, and, well, you don't make the same mistakes that millions of Americans are making every single day with their finances. Now look, this video isn't about exposing anyone with their mistakes or the way that they've used their finances or calling anyone out
that they should be doing a better job or they should get a higher paying job.
Because if that were the case, I would say get a higher paying job and save your money and have a great rest of your day or a great rest of your afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, right? Because I mean, that's vague. You can go ahead and YouTube that, you can Google that, and you'll find that information everywhere. I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and find out what exactly is triggering some of this behavior and some ways that we can actually avoid it, on top of that, adding more money into our bank account. Now, the first money habit that most people tend to fall into is, well, not managing their finances correctly. Another term for that we tend to coin is, well, budgeting. You see, one of the biggest issues that we face is that, well, the school systems unfortunately hasn't done a good enough job of teaching us things that we actually need apart from reading and writing, multiplication, division, things like that. They tend to add more things that we actually need for the real world. Hence, if you ask the average American, they can possibly name all 9 planets, but they can't tell you what tax bracket they're actually in. So when it comes to tracking your finances, knowing how many pennies have come in and how many pennies are going out every single day, well, it all comes down to something called Parkinson's law. Simply put, Parkinson's law is if you allow something enough time, or if you've given it enough time, well, that's exactly how much time it's going to take for you to actually get that activity done. Let me give you an example that we can all relate to. Have you ever been at your job, or if you have a business, and you have 1 week to complete a project, and it literally takes up to the last 24 hours on that last day for you to actually finish that project? Well, that right there is called the Parkinson's law, because if let's say you would have had only 24 hours to complete that project, then you would have taken those same 24 hours and completed that same project that took a week. So how does this actually relate to money and finances? Let's say you're making $800 a week. Isn't it funny how you always find the way to spend, or you always find the way to find expenses that match those $800? Well, that's exactly what Parkinson's law is when it comes to finances. But the interesting thing about it is if you don't actually give money an assignment, and if you don't tell money where to go, then it's going to have its own brain, and it's going to find its own escape route for it to do whatever it wants. So the second money habit that tends to keep us poor is possibly one that you're not as exposed to, and I'll explain it. And that's you're paying too much in taxes. Now, when it comes to paying taxes, understanding the tax code is going to be huge. Now, you of course don't need to be a CPA or a tax wizard in order for you to actually know what tax codes actually benefit you and how you're able to find certain deductions for you to pay less taxes. Because if we actually look at it, well, it's way too many pages. Knowing how to use a tax code properly can save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars from you to having to pay an excess in taxes every single year. So many people have the misconception that taxes or the tax man is out to get them, and that couldn't be further from the truth. You see, over 5,800 pages within the tax code are actually written and put in place for you to not only reduce your taxes, but for you to pay less taxes to the government every year, meaning you're gonna have more money left over, which means that there's only about 30 to 35 pages left over that is actually put in place to increase the amount of taxes that you pay. You see, this year alone, the government handed over 45 million tax refunds. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's money that belongs to me. And you'd be right about that. But the issue is that if you're not aware of what a tax refund is, simply put, a tax refund is the amount of money that the government actually owes you because you overpaid them in the previous calendar year for the amount of hours and days that you actually worked. Now, this is when a good tax plan and a good CPA comes into play, because they're able to guide you along the lines of what tax deductions you're able to take. Are there any tax breaks that you possibly fall within? Are there any deductions that you can take either for your business or for your personal expenses? As well as, are there any write-offs that I can have right now for my business or even my side hustle? In full disclosure, I'm not your CPA, but I will tell you to get with a CPA within your area that knows all the tax rules that you need to know in order to not only drive down your costs, but ultimately help you out with lowering your tax bill. Now, the third habit that keeps people poor and absolutely broke is what you're paying yourself last. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say you have either a side hustle or even at your job and you're making $100,000 a year, and let's say that your average paycheck is $2,000, maybe $3,000, just off the top of my head. Trend with me here. And in those $3,000, you're literally paying your bills first. You're paying your subscriptions. If you have 15 different Netflix accounts under 15 different names, you're going out to fancy restaurants, you're paying your car off, you're paying your mortgage off. And then at the end of it, you literally just have $2 to your name and you're wondering, where the heck did my money go? You see, that's one of the biggest mistakes that people do, and that's why they don't actually enjoy the money that actually comes in to their household and why they don't have any money left over to actually invest. And so one of the things that I recommend is, and you can call up your bank and let them know that whenever a, let's say, check comes into play, or whenever you have a direct deposit, you can go ahead and let them know, hey, I want 10% separated directly to this account, or I want 20% or 30%. Whatever you feel comfortable with. I always recommend something called the 70-20-10 rule, and it's the following: 10% for yourself, meaning your savings, 20% for investments, and then 70% for you to live off of. Now, your goal should be to possibly drive that down to 60% for your living expenses, 20% for your savings, and then 20% for your investments, because that's ultimately how wealth is going to get built. And that's why you driving down your costs and going back to rule number one, knowing where every single penny is going in and where every single penny is coming out of, is super important. Now, the fourth habit is, well, you're accepting your monthly fees. Let's say you have your car insurance, that's $320. You have your credit card, that's right around a $200 payment, and then your utilities are right around $100. Well, what makes you think that you can actually call each of those different departments, get someone on the phone and say, hey, look, I actually want to pay less this month. What can I do to, let's say, drive down the cost of my cable? What's in my insurance right now that I don't actually need? Is there a certain amount of premium that I'm paying for, let's say, a program that I'm involved in that I'm just flat out not using, or maybe it was an upsell and at the time I was excited when I was making the purchase and I didn't even know, I wasn't aware of it. Who can you call right now that will save you an extra $100, $200, maybe even $300 a month? Because again, those are $300 a month that once you compound that toward the end of the year, assuming you're saving that for 12 months, that's $3,600. $3,600 going either into a stock, a high yield savings, or just flat out into your savings. Now, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but as you can see, now that's when you ultimately start saving even more money. Now, this fifth one is one that we all tend to fall within at one point or another, and that's not time management, but time mismanagement. You see, there's a big difference between being busy and actually being productive. And there's nothing that will cost you more money than you wasting time. One of the ways that you can waste time is you're either on the phone a little too long, or if you're working from home, especially in times like this where a lot of people are transitioning into working from home, they don't actually set time blocks. So I'm going to encourage you to set time blocks for everything that you do. Literally. And there's usually two issues that fall within time mismanagement, and that's, well, they don't have goals and they don't actually have a schedule or time blocks. So when you actually have goals and when you know where you're headed, well, at that point, you know exactly where your money's headed because you're working toward a goal. If your goal is to purchase a home, you know exactly, I'm working this many hours because I want to buy my dream home. Or I'm working this many hours because I want to come out of debt. Same thing goes with your time block. They piggyback off of each other. You say, okay, if I, let's say, work from 9 to 3 and I focus hard, I put my phone away. If I am running my business from home, or if I'm working from home because I want that new promotion, then obviously from 9 to 3, it's go time. I can have a little bit of break in between, maybe 10, 15-minute breaks. And again, you can coordinate how you want your schedule to run. But I'm just kind of throwing these ideas out there because if you don't actually have a goal, then it ultimately derails you from being more productive. The sixth money mistake that a lot of people run into, and I think that this one may possibly be the biggest one on the list, and that's you only have one source of income. And if that's you, then listen well to this part. If you only have one source of income, then you've probably realized that depending off of one of anything is extremely dangerous, especially with the pandemic that we have gone through and that we are currently going through, depending what time of the year or what time of the month you're watching this. At the date of this recording, we are currently in a pandemic. In fact, over 40 million Americans are feeling the pain when it comes to having one source of income because, well, now they are burdened with not only having to depend off of unemployment, but also depending off of the government. And we've seen how long it's actually taken for some people to receive their stimulus payments. Now, when it comes to you having more than one source of income, I encourage you to try different things. You can maybe try fixing homes on the side if you're handy. You can maybe try buying and flipping things online. Maybe go on the Facebook Marketplace, find a few things. You can even go in the free section. Let's say there's a couch that someone's giving away, go pick it up. You can literally flip that for an extra $100. You can even try doing some type of surveys online, doing Uber on the side, or even Turo. If you're not familiar with what Turo is what allows you to pretty much rent out your car, or if you have an extra car that you're not using, and let's say someone's in town. So it's kind of like the Airbnb, but for cars, which I think is a pretty cool idea. So the options are actually endless, and the cool thing about it is with the side hustles that you actually have, you can also use that to your advantage come tax time, because you can write off certain expenses for that side hustle, especially if you have a 1099 or if you're getting cash under the table that you couldn't use otherwise at a regular W-2 employment type of job. The seventh mistake that's keeping people broke is, well, you're just flat out not keeping your expenses down, and because of that, you're also causing for your living expenses to surpass your income. So are you familiar with the term keeping up with the Joneses? Well, yeah, that's what ends up happening. You see, you hang around someone that all of a sudden bought a brand new car, and because they're really close with you and there's a little bit of competitive nature between friends or siblings or family members, well, now all of a sudden you feel like you have to purchase a new car as well. Or they moved up to maybe a higher skilled community that now they have a higher homeowner association, higher taxes, they have an extra room that they don't need, but now you feel a little pressured because you want to keep up with that circle. So now you feel that, well, I have to move into that neighborhood, or I have to up my game up as well. And nothing could be further from the truth, by the way, because now what ends up happening is a toxic cycle. And this is what I mean. Because now what ends up happening is a toxic cycle. You see, we start to reward ourselves with bad behavior. We now received a $10,000 raise at our job, so now we have to go out and we have to put out $10,000 worth of expenses to reward ourselves. So now we're really back to square one. So the point of us actually getting the raise, the purpose gets defeated because we never actually end up seeing that money. So try this. Whenever you have extra money that comes in, whether it's from a raise, or maybe it's from overtime, or maybe you just hit a big sale and maybe picked up some new contracts, well, try storing that money and having your bank send it to a completely separate bank account. That way, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. Something else that you can do is, if that money does hit your account and you do see it, this is gonna be a little tempting, but try not to use that money for anywhere between 30 to 60 days, because within that window, there is going to be a lot of emotions running high, and there's going to be certain behavior that you're going to want to start rewarding. And so within 30 to 60 days, it's going to allow you to come to your senses and find out, well, you know what, maybe I don't need that extra bag, or you know what, maybe we don't need to move into the higher up neighborhood, or maybe that extra car, I think I can go ahead and use the car that I have now for an extra year or two. And the eighth and final money habit that we tend to have, and if you've been watching up to this far, then I just want to thank you for checking this video out. Don't forget that this video is sponsored by Amazon's Audible, where you can pick up a free book and a free month with Amazon's Audible by clicking the link in the description. Now, the eighth and final bad habit that keeps people poor and keeps them from getting ahead is, well, they're just flat out not putting their money to work, aka they're not investing. You see, if you don't put your money to work, then you'll always end up working for money. And if that's the case, then you're never going to build large amounts of wealth, and you're never actually going to build a dream lifestyle that you actually deserve, if that's even the case. But if, let's say, you don't actually want to be filthy rich, if you, let's say, you just want a comfortable living, one of the ways that you could be doing that is by ultimately reducing your debt and clearing up the headache of, okay, now I have $900 worth of bills that I have to try to pay off with, let's say, a $3,000 monthly salary. So one of the ways that you can reduce that stress is ultimately by having money work for you, aka creating passive income. Some passive income ideas that you can possibly get into is some type of high yield savings account, real estate, which is my ultimate favorite, stocks, affiliate marketing, even running your own business. And again, all of those serve with different purposes. They're all different vehicles, and they all have different tax benefits that I highly recommend for you to check out individually to see which one you're ultimately going to gravitate to, and then which one ultimately you feel that you would be able to master for what you want with your lifestyle. Now, again, my personal favorite is going to be real estate, just because of what I can do with it. I can depreciate the asset. I also have passive income coming in, and I can also put a tenant in there that's going to bring me multiple sources of income. Let's say I have different doors, but check this out. I can also live in that property, which now means that I don't have to pay any rent which now drives down a complete different cost. One of the ways that you can live in your property for free is by either getting a duplex, buying a small apartment building, or even a triplex. And you can check that out because with some of those, you can even obtain FHA financing, which is only 3.5% down. And there you have it. I hope that you enjoy this video with these 8 money habits that keep us poor. Let me know which one you've been able to come out of that you no longer have fallen victim to, or one that, well, you know, maybe I'm still struggling with this one. And hey, that's all right, because we are all in this journey. We're just going through it differently. Because at the end of the day, as long as you are self-aware of the amount of money that you're not only spending, but of how you are actually using it, then that's really ultimately what matters. Because it's at that point, once you've been exposed to these truths, that you can start attacking it with an actual plan. And so I hope that you found some value in this content. If you did, it would mean a lot to me if you hit that like button down below, because it lets the YouTube algorithm know that this is a channel worth pushing out. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can join the official community, and tap that notification bell so you can get notified every time we have content like this coming out each and every single week. Once again, my name is Irvin Pena, also known as Irv Official. Until next time, everyone, we'll see ya.